Hey guys, Bored Now's latest Buffy the Vampire Slayer review. This is going to be of episode 4 of season 2, and it's called Inca Mummy. So normally I spend quite a while talking about each episode. I ramble on and on sometimes, folks, but you really don't have to worry about that on this video because really there's very little to talk about. With this episode, it's a bit of a dud, and there's sometimes even in bad episodes there's plenty to talk about, but there's not much here. It's very wafer thin. It's very random, cheesy, monster of the week territory, and it's a come down after the last episode, School Hard, with the fantastic debuts of both Spike and Drusilla, and just how good that episode was throughout. And I think it's sort of typical of early season 2, where there's still, quite a few up and downs. We're still really on the road to the show hitting its true highs and getting into peak form, which happens around about the middle part of this season, when a certain storyline kicks into gear and just changes the whole sort of direction of the show, really. So I think some of the early episodes in season 2, they do feel like kind of cast-offs from the first season, still very much in the very random, disposable monster of the week territory. The sort of episode we got a few of in the first season. So because the first season was only like 12 episodes long, maybe they still had some of those ideas, some of those episodes kicking about, so decided to throw them in here. So it's at a stage of the season where we're still waiting for the main arc of the season to really get going. And once that happens, is when the show really kicks it into high gear. But yeah, this is another down sort of episode after the highs of last week. So I'll just mention, and the director is Ellen S. Pressman, who directed one other episode previously, and that was The Puppet Show in season 1, which you'll probably remember. I really enjoyed that episode, although I think it was probably more to do with the writing than it was her direction. And to be honest, her direction isn't great here either. It's written by Matt Keenan and Joe Rankemeyer, something like that, who previously directed one other episode. I'm actually not sure which one, sorry about that, but this is their final writing credit on the show before leaving, and again they don't leave much of an impression, to be fair. Pressman would go on and have quite a long TV career. Well, she still writes for TV now, and sort of a journeyman kind of TV director / writer. So she did an episode of My So-Called Life, for example, and more recently she did a Riverdale episode, but has gone on to have a pretty consistent career, no matter what you think of her talents. But yeah, she directs this episode. So very sort of basic, generic kind of setup, where at the start of the episode, the Scoobies visit like this mummy museum, this mummy exhibit, and there's basically like this sort of really troublesome, really kind of just this goofy, rebellious type teenager who basically has to be an arse and go into the mummy enclosure where the tomb is, and lo and behold, a curse is set off, a curse is broken, he's dragged in, and he's got the life sucked out of him, as we've seen in like movies involving the mummy. So then he takes the mummy's place in the tomb, and the curse is sort of broken. The seal is broken. The mummy is let loose on Sunnydale. And at the same time, the students are having like this exchange type program, the sort of thing that happens in real life. And so, like fellow teenagers or students from around the world are like coming and exchanging and staying with them. So Cordelia has one. She has like this Swedish guy called Sven staying with her, and it's funny, her kind of hoping she'll get a really dishy guy, and asking Buffy, "What's yours like?" It's pretty funny. There's some good Cordy in this episode actually, but yeah. So Buffy's exchange student is called Impotter, and it's actually a guy. But what happens is he shows up. He's waiting for her at like the local coach station, and obviously the mummy's on the loose. So she goes to the coach station and she mummifies him, and lo and behold, she takes his place in the form of like this gorgeous female mummy, a Potter, who turns Xander head. He immediately falls straight head over heels in love with her. So that becomes a bit of a drama with Xander, where he falls for this girl, which then sets up other things with Willow. So that's your general sort of premise of the episode. But obviously, the issue is she is this she needs to like basically kill others to sort of give her life and keep her sort of alive, and slowly her secret starts to come out. So there's that conflict when Xander falls for her and she sort of falls for Xander. So there's a whole sort of thing going on there. So there's a couple of notable things here, a couple of actually sort of good debuts. So we have Oz appearing for the first time, and that is of course Seth Green, who people know from the Austin Powers movies. He was also in Idle Hands. He was in Enemy of the State, quite a few different movies. Also, he was in an early episode of The X-Files, one of the very first episodes actually. But he goes on to become Oz, that is a big character in the Buffyverse over the next 2 or 3 years, and some interesting developments in this season with him. But this is his introduction, and we get him with his band, this quite sort of cheesy emo style band called Dingo It's Ate My Babies, and Cordelia happens to be dating like the lead singer called Devon, and you get some quite good banter with Oz and Devon, because although they're very different people, they do sort of have this sort of connection, this chemistry, and it is sort of credible that these guys would hang out, even though they're very different. And we see, from the off, then Oz, whereas Devon is almost like your typical teenage like rock wannabe, where he's in it for the fame, or he's in it, to try and get with girls and stuff. And yeah, he's really flashy and cheesy, whereas Oz is the total opposite. He's very quietly spoken, very deadpan. I mean, his sort of dry sense of humour and wit is a big part of the character, but you can see he's more sensitive and thoughtful and a guy of few words, and that's kind of one of his big things on the show, the fact that when he does talk, he really says something sort of important and makes an impact. So, but they're sort of up on stage performing at the Bronze during like the sort of one of the last scenes, kind of the big climactic scene, and it is this really full-on sort of cheesy hair type emo rock, which I think is meant to be ironic. I think they're like intentionally sort of bad, but at the same time, you can see that they're the sort of band who would sort of be like a high school type rock band, and you could imagine them sort of playing at the Bronze, and actually people, naively kind of getting into them. But I think they are sort of self-deprecating in that way. Cool name anyway, Dingo's Ain't My Baby. And Oz is a cool character, nicely played with some charm by Seth Green, and a good introduction here. They set up, the relationship, his attraction to Willow. And Willow actually steals the episode because it's like a fancy dress costume, like party type thing at the Bronze. And she, being unorthodox and awkward, Willow shows up in an Eskimo outfit, which, folks, it's adorable. I mean, if anyone can pull off an Eskimo outfit and make it look cute and sweet and just adorable, it is Alison Hannigan, and she nails it. So Cordy gives a shit for it naturally, being the bully, kind of, because she's in like a slightly more revealing, sexy Hawaiian sort of gal outfit, and she sarcastically strolls up to Willow and says, "Good outfit, cool outfit. That's exactly what I was gonna wear." Like, just sarcastic, putting her down, and walks off. And Willow's obviously all embarrassed and shy, but sorry, Cordy. You got outstage. Willow in that Eskimo outfit rocks. So yeah, we get the first like kind of indication, and there's going to be something with Willow and Oz. So he's playing on stage. He looks over, gazes over at Willow, and is just awestruck. And there's a funny like gag where he asks Devon, who is that girl sort of thing. And Devon, I think he thinks then Oz is thinking of one of the other girls, like one of the exchange students or something. And, Oz says, no, the one in the Eskimo outfit. And yeah, he's just starstruck, but that's kind of the whole thing. That shot is just, sort of beautiful. And as I said, there's different stuff happening because it once again brings up the Willow and Xander stuff. Her still holding a torch for him, and Buffy trying to encourage Willow. You've got to put yourself out there. You've got to, get over him and just go for someone else. Or you've got to make a decision. Is kind of her advice. Because Willow, once she sees like the attraction between Xander and the Potter, is very sort of jealous, very sort of insecure, and she says, at least with you, Buffy, I knew he never stood a chance. And I do like the line actually when Buffy like proposes, then she makes a decision one way or the other. Then she kind of says, I can't remember what Willow says exactly, but she says, you're right, Buffy, sort of thing. And Buffy says, I'm proud of you. And she says, well, I haven't decided yet, which is really great. Adorable delivery again from Hannigan. So, again, like most of the episode, you get some pretty good drama with the Scoobies, some good interactions. I sort of like Xander actually arriving at Buffy's house with, like, he's dressed as, like, Clint Eastwood in the Man with No Name trilogy. Pretty cool outfit, and there's a nice little exchange with him and Buffy. And Buffy can't go because she's like chaperoning or something. So that stuff is pretty well done. I like a lot of the comedy moments with Cordelia. I love her with Spen at like the dance thing at the end where she kind of says she's really getting fed up with him at this point because he struggles with English. And I love her, trying because he's always following her around. And she's like, go get drink, fruit punchy sort of thing, which is just brilliant. Yeah, Cordy has some great lines in this episode. It's sort of her on top form again. Speaking of debuts, as I said earlier, there's another debut, which is the first appearance of Jonathan, Danny Strong as Jonathan, who not as big a character as Oz becomes, but still has a big role to play as a supporting character, and actually in a future season does have a bigger role. But yeah, he's this very sort of nerdy character around school, and Danny Strong plays him to perfection. Really, it's a really sort of likable performance. He does a lot of the physical comedy really well. But I'll talk more about him in future episodes. But this is his first appearance, and he's like, yeah, he's potentially like a damsel almost, because he almost becomes another victim for Potter towards the end, before Sander comes along. And then there's kind of this fun gag at the end with him and Cordy at the Bronze, where she's getting Jonathan to get a drink, and she's giving him all these like particular things that she wants, and she like strolls over to the Scoobies and said, "There's no substitutes. High school guys are the way to go." Having gone off the idea of older sort of guys after what happened with Spen. So yeah, pretty solid debut for Jonathan as well. But it is a really rough episode. There's lots of like awkward cuts and edits. Like there's kind of this fight scene once where the kind of you Potter's sort of like watcher or like master or whatever you want to say, who's basically trying to make things right, having had the seal broken and her released. So he sort of goes after her, and he just shows up and attacks, like goes after her and Xander with a knife sort of thing. And that's kind of, there's an awkward sort of edit in that scene. It looks really silly anyway. He looks silly because he's wearing this sort of pirate style outfit or similar anyway. But it's roughly sort of edited. The sort of action doesn't look very good, quite clunky. The kind of metaphor, the link they tried to make in this episode is that they tried to connect the Potter, with Buffy, with her being the Slayer and the Potter having this sort of destiny, and that they're both kind of trapped by their destiny, that kind of thing. But they never really explore it enough. It's a very vague sort of, it's brought up once, but then you don't really get much more of it. And I think the main problem is then, despite the fact then we're not really invested in her Potter, and she's doing these awful things. Not totally her fault, but she is going around killing people, and the episode does try to make you care about her, I think, and you never really do. Obviously it's interesting seeing Xander and his, potential romances, and kind of it almost turning bad, or it does turn bad, and there's a nice little growth again for Xander at the end where he, saves Willow and stuff and sort of stands up to a Potter. But yeah, the Potter character, there's nothing really to her. The gimmick is very cheesy and sort of outdated. There's some rough effects. and you just don't really care that the sort of metaphor it's driving for isn't very subtle, and it just doesn't compel you. The actress playing the Potter isn't very good neither. I mean, Eric Sally, her name is. Remarkably, she was in American Beauty. Not sure which part she played. I'll have to look into that one. But also from Dust to Dawn 3, which maybe says a bit more. Anyway, she's been in a few things. She's now known for car ads, apparently dealership ads, which is pretty funny. But she's got the look really. You can sort of see why Xander would fall for her, but she's not terrible. I mean, there's been worse co-stars, but she is very one-note, and the character's very one-note. There's no real sort of depth to her. There's no real reason to invest or feel compelled or interested. So, yeah, that's pretty much the episode. It's a very flat monster of the week, sort of overly cheesy. And it drags as well. That's the other thing. The pacing is sort of off, really. Nice moments, and there is sort of a guilty pleasure sort of feel to it. I'm not going to deny that. I sort of got off a bit off Sanders' like cheesy flirting, like the whole Twinkie moment, but that's not enough to save it. It is really poor, and it drags. That's the worst thing, because I think if you compare it to something like Some Assembly Required, which is a poor episode and does suffer for a lot of the same reasons, at least I think there was more enjoyable moments in that, and at least that didn't necessarily drag. I mean, with this, the pacing isn't great, so I'll give this episode a 4 out of 10, and I think I'll put it underneath Some Assembly Required. I think it overall is a weaker episode than that, so that means it's going to be right near the bottom, just above Teacher's Pet, which I still think is the weakest episode of the show so far. But yeah, this isn't far off. This is very disposable and forgettable. And that's Inca Mummy Gal, my review. Let me know your thoughts in the comment below if you have different feelings on the episode and where it should be placed. And I'll be back next time very soon with an episode of, or review of the 5th episode of season 2, which is gonna be, I've frozen. Reptilia Boy. So that's the next review. But I'll see you guys again soon. Goodbye.